Excellent, that's good. Hi, everybody. So we're doing this course called Embracing Freedom. It's all about renunciation as we go through the different levels of the path. So welcome to the class. So let's begin as we normally do by doing a short meditation. So we'll begin with a breathing meditation, then I'll set up a visualization, and we'll take refuge together and generate the mind of enlightenment. So get comfortable in your seat. Allow your eyes to close and let the body breathe itself. So the body is slowing down, it's beginning to relax, and the mind is focused upon the breath. And the breath is flowing naturally. Oh gosh. And while the breath flows naturally, the body is beginning to relax more and more, and the mind is aware of this relaxation. And with the body relaxed and the mind focused, it's easy to imagine the appearance of all the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas in the room above you. You recollect that you are surrounded by all sentient beings, and you are leading them all in the process of taking refuge in these three rare sublime ones, the Buddha, the Dharma, and his Sangha. And you are doing this because you wish to put an end to your own suffering and you want to help others do the same. So recollect that this is actually possible. This can be done, primarily because of the nature of the mind and because you've come into contact with authentic teachers, these authentic teachings, and a spiritual community. So please join me in saying, I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. So in response to this wish, lights and nectars pour out of the heart of the Buddha and they wash over you and over all the beings surrounding you. And whatever obstacles and hindrances there might be to becoming an authentic refugee or having an authentic faith response to these three rare sublime ones. Those obstacles and hindrances are now washed away and the mind retains its pure and open nature. And from this pure, open nature arises the four boundless thoughts. And so you say, may all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be separated from the happiness that is without suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from the bias of attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. In response to this wish, again, lights and nectars pour from the heart of the Buddha, washing over you and over all the beings surrounding you. And any hindrances or obstacles to these four boundless thoughts are washed away. And the light and the nectars reveal these four qualities to be reflections of the mind's nature, effortlessly manifesting. And then with a sense of devotion, you recollect the field of merit above you. And you say, reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginning this time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own and others' merits to the great enlightenment. And then to counteract any clinging we might have to the activity of merit making and to ourselves as the person making merit, we recollect emptiness and have our body transform through our wisdom into the appearance of a pure, wonderful land, which we offer to the refuge field. And we say, this ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, four continents, the sun and the moon, I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Yiram Guru Ratna Mandala Kamnayatayami. So this pure land mandala has been released by us. It's been accepted by the Buddha, and he looks at us with delight and smiles. And we look up into his eyes. We see that he's gazing at us with compassion, and we feel accepted and at ease. And then an emanation of the Buddha leaves his heart. It moves through space to come and abide above the crown of your head, facing in the same direction you are. It begins to descend, entering the crown of your head and coming down through your body until this emanation of light rests at the level of your heart and begins to expand, filling your body and mind with light. And the light goes out through the pores of your skin and fills the 10 directions of space. And wherever there are beings who necessarily inhabit space, they are utterly transformed by this light and arise in a fully awakened state. So there's no difference between others and oneself. In fact, we recognize these two terms, others and self, to be mere conceptual designations, having no ultimate reality. And we rest in that discovery. And then from the 10 directions of space, the light begins to withdraw, bringing every enlightened being with it. And this light re-enters your heart. You feel embodied, and you know yourself to be breathing normally and naturally. And you can feel the seat that you're sitting on. And you realize that this meditation has been on the level of imagination and has imprinted with the mind, producing a condition that is necessary for enlightenment. And being only one of the conditions, decide to continuously study the Buddha Dharma, to put an end to your suffering, to become fully awakened for the sake of others. And then breathing deeply through your nostrils, exhale through your mouth, and in your own time, let your eyes flutter open and move your body in whichever way you'd like to, until you find yourself once again fully aware, fully awake in front of your screen. Okay, so again, welcome everybody to this course called Renunciation, Embracing Freedom, and we're on to class 4. So today we're going to have a look at 4 principles. We'll also look at how to practice using these 4 principles, and then we're going to summarize what we know. So we begin, as we have done in the past, with this quote by the Sachin Kanganingpo. So this quote's actually called Parting from the 4 Attachments. And it says, if you are attached to this life, you are not a true spiritual practitioner. If you are attached to samsara, you do not have renunciation. If you are attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If grasping arises, you do not have the view. Now, this teaching was revealed to Sachin Kanganingpo when he was 14 years old by Arya Manjushri, and it's been recognized as one of the jewels of all the Tibetan traditions. And in it, you can see there's we're talking about one of the great hindrances to spiritual life, attachment, and how this attachment needs to be brought to an end. And in today, we're going to be looking at how we can combine the view with the different method aspects with renunciation itself. So renunciation is the determination to be free from samsara and achieve liberation. So that's it in a nutshell, a determination to be free from samsara and achieve liberation. How are we to do that? By giving up true suffering and its causes. And how can we give up true suffering and its causes? By using a true path to bring about a true cessation. If you try to remember this definition of samsara, of renunciation, remember it's always got the 2 parts: a determination to be free from samsara and achieve liberation. Now, to do this, there's a sort of steps we need to go through in a sequence. And this is the sequence. We need to first of all consider our own suffering, and from that basis create a determination to be free. On that basis, we think about others and acknowledge that they are undergoing similar forms of suffering. We shift our attention from ourselves to others. However, this will not be able to be done authentically or strongly unless we do the first step. This wish to be free from suffering and having a determination to be free. This is self-compassion or renunciation. We think about others suffering, great compassion arises and a wish to do something about it. But this is important. If we do not first consider our own suffering, we will not reach the key point of the practice. Missy, you got your hand raised?
Yeah, I'm just thinking this is something that kind of happens quite naturally because so many people that start up like self-help groups and things, it's because they've gone through some incredible trauma and then just the next thing is I've got to help others in the
Under,
same boat.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, so this is like you say, this it's a natural progression, but it's this first part that's really important. We've got to acknowledge the difficulties and sufferings that we're going through and see how deep and wide those are. And from there, we can authentically move across to see, oh my gosh, others are in the same boat as us. I want to help them too. So now we sort of begin a major part of today's lesson. So it's based around these 4 principles. So I'm going to put them up first. We can look at them. I'll say a few words about them, and then we'll take each one in turn. And these are related to, especially these 2 ones here. Consider your own suffering, and then think about other suffering, and pull these 2 ideas together. So the 4 principles are: if someone abuses you, do not abuse them in return. So the second is, if someone gets angry with you, do not get angry with them in return. The third, if someone exposes your hidden faults, do not expose theirs in return. Finally, if someone strikes you, do not strike them back. So these 4 principles are part of the Buddhist concept of non-violence and compassion, also known as ahimsa and karuna. And the source of these principles is the Buddhist teachings themselves and the practices in the various Buddhist texts. So you see, this is mentioned in the Dhammapada, the Tripitaka, and quite a few of the Pali sources as well. So it goes right across in the Pali and the Sanskrit. And these principles are commonly taught in Buddhist meditation and mindfulness practices. So the objectives of these principles are to develop positive qualities in yourself and to cultivate compassion and empathy towards others. Yes, Biffy.
Yeah, so these are the 4 things that we think when we do prostrations.
Okay.
Yeah, when you put your 2 hands and the 2 knees on the ground, this
Yeah.
is the 4 things that you think, and I always forget one out of the 3, one out of the 4. But yeah, so that you're pushing back against your own kind of instinctual retaliation,
Mm-hmm.
touching the 4 places to the ground, the 4 limbs to the ground.
So these are the hands and the knees, aren't they?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the head, when you put your head on the ground, then that's, and may I attain, the path of no more learning. So, and then it's really nicely tied up, because then the way to do it is when you push up from the ground, then you're bringing all the sentient beings with you. So you need the sentient beings to be able to actually practice this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, so this is like they're called four principles, and they go right across all the traditions of the Buddha Dharma. So they're real basic. But you can also see in here, I think, the ideas of renunciation. You're going to stop doing something, and you're going to do something else. You're going to stop causing yourself suffering by harming others.
Eddie,
Yes, yeah.
I'm thinking, in following up on what Miffy said, I'm thinking that those instinctive reactions,
Mhm.
which they do seem to be,
Yeah.
seem to, I'm just kind of theorizing, I think they must come from the lizard brain, the lizard part of the brain,
Yeah, yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
that's right.
rather than the cerebral cortex, the higher thinking part of the brain.
Yeah, that's yeah. I sort of go along with that, Susan. That's right. There's sort of there's not much thinking in this, is there? This is that instinctual reaction.
Or you could put it another way and say the lizard brain is a result of these four kind of retaliation things.
Well, yeah, they sort of support one another, aren't they? Don't they? You
Yeah,
do
they
one, and
feed
you
into
can.
each other.
Yeah, that's right. It's a circular. It's a samsara response. So let's have a look at each one. So do not return abuse. So this is this idea of not retaliating when harmed. And it's really based on the idea that reacting with violence or aggression only perpetuates the cycle of harm. So it's a bit like this, what you're saying, Susan, and then Miffy, you start off with the lizard brain, you get some sort of response, and then the response goes back into the lizard brain and it goes around again. This idea of samsara. And this returning abuse for abuse doesn't actually address the root causes of conflict. So, from our perspective as students of Dharma, what do we rely upon? What can we rely upon within the Dharma teachings to not do this, to not return abuse with abuse? What can we draw from the Dharma to help us do this?
Eddie, just stop the share for a moment.
So, any ideas?
I've got an
Erin,
idea.
you've got your hand raised, yeah?
Yeah. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, we can.
Thank you. I was thinking of mindfulness, just to notice like, oh, here's this thing that's happened, and take a breath and then think, okay, I've got a choice. How am I going to respond?
Yep, okay, yep, that's right. So this is, yep, so mindfulness is definitely required here. That's for sure. Can anybody else so like mindfulness of what's the object that we need to remember?
That's a really great idea. And well, I think one thing we need to remember is that we have a choice, and if we take the wrong choice to strike back in the same way or to retaliate in the same way, if we can remember that that will only increase our own suffering, maybe we won't take that choice.
Yeah, that's good, Susan. That's right. Miffy, yes.
I was just thinking, I try and remind myself that any aggression like or abuse that comes, it comes from suffering. So it appears, rude or aggressive, but underneath it's suffering, and then that's what stops me retaliating.
Okay. Caroline, any idea what do you think that?
Well,
Yeah.
I guess for me, it's sort of like karma comes to mind. You know, one of the certainties of karma is that from positive actions come positive results, from negative actions come negative results, and that stays on in the negative results until you purify. So it's sort of, yeah, the karmic law of cause and effect is what comes to mind with all of those four, I guess.
Yeah, so that's right. So all of the four are rooted in this idea of karmic cause and effect. And so as you pointed out, Erin, it's this mindfulness is to remember that when you harm someone else, you harm yourself. It's you know, and sometimes you get that feedback pretty rapidly, but other times it's over long periods of time. So it doesn't appear that you actually harmed yourself. So this is what they call, the certainty of karma. And it's a bit like what you're saying, Susan, about the lizard brain, this idea of these dumb responses, animalistic responses. But then as Erin pointed out, you take a breath and you can say, I can make a choice here. The brain, this part of my brain, the lizard thing, wants to abuse back, wants to return harm for harm. But I know it doesn't work. I know that won't solve anything. In fact, all I'll do is harm myself more. So as Erin said, you need to take a couple of breaths and try, and it's not going to be easy to do this. Because, like you say, this part is driving us out to respond to abuse with abuse. But if we can recognize that it doesn't help me, it actually harms me. It'll harm the other person, but it harms me too. So what I'm trying to prevent, I'm actually adding to. And if we can see that, you'd have this sort of like a natural response of not returning abuse with abuse. And this is where this idea of this authentic renunciation has got to come from. It's not. It's what can I say? In fact, really, I think it's like a natural response to this understanding that when I harm others, I harm myself.
So Eddie, that changes it from kind of a moralistic thing of I should be good or I shouldn't be bad to actually thinking about it and going, oh no, this is a natural, a naturally safer way.
Yeah. Yeah. So so it's like this. When we began by looking at consider the sequence, considering your own suffering creates the determination to be free. So we start there and we realize that when I respond to abuse with abuse, I'm not freeing myself here. This is not the way to freedom. This is the way to imprison myself again. This is the way to hurt myself again. This is this thing about the law of karma. Karma is primarily to do with ourselves, isn't it? What we do has an effect on us. So if we hurt another, we hurt ourselves. And of course, you can see that this is not a compassionate response to being harmed, is it? To like hurt yourself a little bit more. Oh my gosh, like it doesn't work. So as you see, Aaron, you've got to breathe. And as we pointed out on Sunday, Caroline, to be patient, isn't it? To bear the harm, to not respond with harm. And as Miffy pointed out, well, the harm of the other person abusing me is coming from their suffering, from their lizard response. And they have no control over it. And as Erin has pointed out, using mindfulness, we go, I've got to exert some control over myself. This mindful tool is a wonderful tool to have. I can take a couple of deep breaths. That gives me a few moments of patience. That I can recollect, this person is suffering. Abusing them won't help them, and it won't help me. I can make some other response. And I think you'll see as we go through each of these four, it's basically the same technique. And you can see here, there's techniques, this restraint is that's compassion towards ourselves and being compassionate towards the others, non-harming the other, non-harming oneself. So Chodron Rinpoche says in his book of An Offering Cloud of Nectar, he says, when others use abusive language towards us, if we are not able to bear the harm and instead reply in retaliation, the resentment will increase and conflict will occur. When others criticize us or abuse us, if we take that criticism or abuse without becoming upset, then the mind won't be disturbed. And then we won't disturb the minds of others. And if you remember, so this is the basic teachings on karmic cause and effect, but we can even step beyond that and go into thought transformation, go into the mind of enlightenment that seeks enlightenment and think, remember verse 5 from the 8 verses of thought transformation. When others out of jealousy mistreat me with abuse, insults and the like, may I accept defeat and offer victory to others. So you can see we've got two methods here, one from the side of the renunciation and one side from the great compassion going towards enlightenment. Okay, let's have a look at the next one. So the second point is do not return anger with anger. Now, of course, we've probably all done this in the past, return anger with anger. And again, it's like, so what happens? What happens if we return anger with anger?
Well, isn't there something about mirror neurons that it's such an instinctual thing? Someone's angry, you just do it.
Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
mirror
The
it
brain
back
just
again.
goes, "Rrr." That's right.
Yeah.
And it's like the abuse, somebody abuses us, we're quick to fire up. And this is
And
the
I
same
suppose that's
with all of these.
it's one of the good things about being a woman that you kind of think twice about showing the anger back again because of like your threat to your own physical safety. So at least there's some kind of restraint happening.
Yeah, a natural fear of being physically attacked. So there's many different ways of thinking about this phenomena so that we don't return anger with anger. So one is you think, okay, so you can ask yourself, well, am I an enlightened being? And if your answer is no, well, it's no, right? So you're not an enlightened being. That means you have afflictive mental states. You can ask yourself, have I actually entered a path yet? Have I got uncontrived renunciation or bodhicitta? And if your answer is no, I don't have that either. Okay, so I'm not enlightened and I haven't entered a path. So I'm a beginner. And I'm under the control of karma and afflictive mental states. And anybody else who's not enlightened or on a path is just like me. So of course people are going to get angry at me. This is the nature of being in samsara. And of course I also am going to feel angry towards others. This is the natural outcome of being in samsara. So that's just how it is for us. But then you got to ask yourself, yeah, that's all true. But when somebody's angry at me, what's the consequences of being angry back? So now we ask that question, we're talking about karma again. So is anger a positive or a negative? When I speak angrily, is it out to harm or to help? And if I'm responding to harm with harm, again, you come back, this behavior hurts me. It doesn't resolve the situation. I'm harmed. I've harmed myself again.
Yeah, Eddie, that's true. And the times that I remember where I have responded in anger, I felt afterwards regret because it made me not feel good. It made me feel pain.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
right.
I don't want to go there again.
Yeah, that's right. That's great, Susan. Caroline? Yeah,
Yeah, it reminds me in purification practice, Susan, where you say you regret the things that I have done, made others do, like get angry back, and rejoiced in others doing, like someone getting angry at someone I'm getting angry at too. So I always think of it in that three-way. It's sort of, and when you think, what I've made others do as well as what you've done is a bit sort of, it really reflects a mirror back.
yeah. So one of the things, as you pointed out, Susan and Caroline has reiterated that it it doesn't solve the problem. It just leaves a lot of hurt people, yourself and someone else, and often a lot of resentment about it too. It's hard, isn't it? Afterwards, when somebody's hurt you, been angry towards you, and then you've been angry back, then takes a bit of wherewithal from either one person to say, "I'm sorry about that." Most of us don't do that. We just go, we wipe them, right? It's like, okay, they're crazy. I don't have much to do with them. But then we forgot, yeah, but we responded a bit crazily too. So, in the Bodhisattva's way of life, and in some of the other texts, there's huge chapters, like especially the Bodhisattva's way of life, a chapter on patience, where they talk about all the great harm that you do to yourself with by being angry. So anger has a lot of faults. It can give you a very short-term sense of, like I won or a little victory, but it's not very tasty, is it, Susan? We know it, right? It doesn't leave a good taste in your mouth when you've been angry towards somebody and like won. It's not a sweet victory. So again, this is once again coming back to the teachings of karma. So we look at, by not responding to anger with anger, we're expressing self-compassion because we've not hurt ourselves, and we haven't hurt the other person. And so this is very good, not to respond to anger with anger. So the third one is called do not return exposure. So again, so in general, what do you think this means?
Can you just elaborate on what you mean by exposure?
Yeah, so somebody has exposed something about you, so and it's very uncomfortable. You don't like it. It's been hidden. Right? It's something about yourself that you've hidden, and then somebody else has revealed it, and it's hurt you.
So is
So
this
then,
like perceived humiliation?
yeah, that's right. Yeah, that could be one of them. And so, this thing we call tit for tat, isn't it? So you've told something that I thought you shouldn't. I didn't want you to. It's like secretive. So I'm going to tell your secret to expose somebody else's fault. If someone else has exposed our fault, we feel pained by it. So I'm going to expose your faults. And I said, we know this is like tit for tat. We probably played this sort of thing when we were children, or you've seen children do it. I'm going to tell Mum that you did this and that. And the other one says, well, I'm going to tell Dad or Mum that you did this and that, right? We go back and forth and we both feel really, scared and shaken.
Eddie, this is a really tricky one because it feeds into just feedback. So what we might feel as someone exposing our faults could be someone trying to do us a good turn to let us know, or giving us constructive feedback. But if we're feeling, if we don't have confidence, we'll experience it as being exposed or
Well, it's like this again,
humiliated.
the analogy of the lizard brain, right? The lizard's been exposed to the light, right? And hey, it doesn't like it. Right? Yeah, so it's going to push your rocks over and show what's hidden, what you've hidden. Yeah. So Kyabja Dilgai Khyentse Rinpoche says, if someone criticizes you or picks on your most sensitive points, or angrily insults you with the most offensive language, do not return like for like, no matter how difficult it is to bear. So practice patience. So again, we're talking about this on Sunday, and Caroline brought it up, talking about, it's very hard to express love and kindness without patience when one has been hurt. So it's like patience is the middle ground. You've got to hold that before anything else could come out of it. So practice patience and never give way to anger. So take this sense of when somebody else exposes some of your qualities that you're not proud of, take it positively and use it as a chance to let go of your own pride. So who's this? There was an American philosopher, politician. So when his faults were exposed, his first take on it was like a yes and a good. And I know myself, if you say yes or great, that's true. Straight away it cuts off the hurt. And he would say, yes, that's true. And in his own mind he'd say, and thank goodness you didn't expose the other faults. These ones were quite obvious. Oh, that's great, because I've got a heap more that weren't brought out. So when I read that, I laughed. Now that's right, Yeah. He says, by not seeking revenge or exposing others' flaws, the individual can demonstrate compassion and understanding towards others, which can help to build relationships and promote positive interactions. And so next we come to not striking back. I think this one is pretty straightforward. You all know, what not striking back means. It means you've been struck, and it says, look, don't strike back. So again, if we look at it through the lens of karma, there's behavioral karma. So once you get used to any of these things, they can become repetitive behaviors. So really, Khyentse Rinpoche is saying this is not actually the worst part about these 4 different things of karma, that the behavior repeats. So here he says, so rather than striking back, be generous, allow them the victory. Sort of be like happy to lose. So allowing others to win is a characteristic of all Buddhist paths. Dilgai Khyentse Rinpoche says, in fact, what is there to be won or lost? From an absolute viewpoint, there is not the slightest difference between winning and losing. And if you remember that poem, If, Rudyard Kipling, where he called winning and losing the 2 great impostors. Okay, so let's move on. So this is this idea of seeing all the faults of returning harm for harm, and restraining ourselves from it and trying to practice something else, doing something else. So we see the faults and shortcomings of cyclic existence, the great faults of returning harm for harm. And so we generate a very strong wish to abandon it and be free from these afflictions that drive us to stay within the cycle of samsara. So in summary, our own freedom depends upon this deep and pure self-compassion. And this wisdom can be imbued, the wisdom realizing interest, but also the wisdom realizing karmic cause and effect, mundane wisdom. So the wisdom realizing interest is supramundane wisdom, the wisdom that responds to the teachings of karmic cause and effect, rationally. This is self-compassion. It's the basis for when we see others are just like us. They don't want to be hurt by criticism. They don't want to be struck. We don't either. So it helps us not to strike back. So now we're going to have a look now at the sort of advanced level of practitioner, and then we're going to go to like the super advanced level of practitioner. So in terms of the advanced practitioner, now we're talking about the mind of enlightenment, a person who seeks to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of others. And their mind of enlightenment is based on this renunciation of suffering. So in other words, the renunciation is subsumed in the mind of enlightenment. So the advanced level practitioner, their aim, of course, is full awakening or Buddhahood. That's their direct aim. To practice it, they do it this way. They start practicing 6 perfections, the 4 ways of gathering disciples, and they engage in the Vajrayana path. And what they're seeking to eliminate is these cognitive obscurations, relating to the afflictions. So this is really, cognitive obscurations have to do with the appearance of inherent existence. And cognitive obscurations prevent the mind becoming omniscient. So to become a Buddha, it means you have omniscience. So these things are sort of in the way, these cognitive obscurations. And to do all this, the person has to engage in these meditations that lead to this level of motivation. So you have equanimity, 7-point cause and effect, equalizing, exchanging self and others, relating to this non-contrived bodhicitta. So at this level here, it's contrived. And here it's uncontrived. So to have an uncontrived mind, we need to rely upon it, first of all, being contrived, being, thought through, in other words, using ideas, thinking it all through step by step by step, until it becomes quite natural. So this is just like driving a car.
So Eddie, it's okay to kind of feel a bit fake or forced in the beginning because we are actually practicing it. And so we try and practice so that one day it'll be sincere and automatic. Is that?
Yeah, well, you want to use the word fake so much. It's like I said, use the analogy instead of driving a car, yeah? Like you're not good at it. Like you're a learner. But that cars can be driven, and you've been in cars that are driven very well, and you want to get up to that standard. So we're just trying. We're just trying. We're not great drivers yet. We could be. And to be a great driver, to have a real mind of enlightenment, we need to engage in these practices. We need to go through the map step by step, bit by bit. So we've got the motivation, right? These here, equanimity, 7-point cause and effect, equalizing, exchanging self and others, they're like the causes for this mind seeking enlightenment for the benefit of others. Once we have this mind that seeks the benefit of others, we engage in the 6 perfections, the 4 ways of gathering disciples, and the Vajrayana. So just now, our next slide has to really to do with this word here called the meditations that lead to the level, or meditations that lead to the motivation of this level. And so they're like the causes that bring about this bodhicitta, authentic, uncontrived bodhicitta. So we've got 2 ways of doing it, as I pointed out, but there's also a third called the uncommon way. So we have Atisha's 7 cause and effect personal instruction. We have Atisha's, Shantideva's equalizing. Lama Tsongkhapa combines them into an 11-point method. So this is like we're in the car learning to drive. We're trying to become a really good driver. And what happens is that when we engage, so here this is for the 11-point, what you're actually renouncing, what you practice to do that, and then what the result of it is. You can see here we begin with immeasurable equanimity, and we move all the way out to radical altruism, also called the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta. And so each side you're dropping something. This is the renunciation part. And this is on the pink level here. This is what we have to do to drop that, and this is what comes after it, the new behavior. The new behavior is to do with others, right? Because this is a great stage of a path here. So if you have any questions on this section, please ask.
Eddie, can you maybe just lead us through one section, just as an example?
Okay, so let's take the third step here, the forgetting of kindness. So I'm sure most of us forget kindness, the kindness that others extend towards us, right? So to stop that, to drop that forgetting, we remember kindness. And we often start with the kindness of one's mother. But if one's had a bad relationship with one's mother, well, we have to start somewhere else, right? Then it might be a brother, a sister, an uncle, a teacher. That really doesn't matter. We've got to find somebody. And then we remember their kindness. And out of that remembrance comes this new thing called gratitude. So if you've been reading about positive mental qualities and things like that, so there's a lot of focus now put on this very practical and easy thing to do called gratitude training. Train yourself in gratitude. So I'll often say before you go to bed at night, think of all the things you're grateful for. When we wake up in the morning as a Buddhist, the first thing you should be grateful for is that you're still alive and breathing. So we train ourselves in gratitude. And you can go backwards to remember kindness, to stop ourselves forgetting kindness. Okay, so that's one, but it's the same sort of thing as you go through each of the lines, going from one to the other. So on stage 8 here, so we all have fears, and all of us have degrees of egocentricity. So how to tackle both of these is through the practice of exchanging self and others. And what does that develop? Courage. Now, so there's a couple of examples, and Caroline, I think you were going to ask something, and maybe someone else.
I was just going to confirm that the green ones are in fact the 11 points from
They are.
Shantideva, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
it's very, it's a very neat way of how you've adapted it in kind of good general language too, Eddie. So it's nicely
so
done.
Thank you. Yeah, so here we have Lama Tsongkhapa's 11-point methodology to develop the mind of enlightenment. So, so when we learn about, try to have an authentic mind of bodhicitta, we learn 6 causes, 1 effect. We learn equalizing, exchanging self for others, but then in terms of practicing it, we've got to pull them together. So we learn here, learn there. We know what they are, and then we put them together like this, and suddenly it becomes even more powerful. So as we do our meditations, you want to try and go through like this, become very familiar with it, and understand what you're actually doing, what you're actually developing. So sometimes that's not all that clear within the text. Okay, so this is now all of this has to do with the method side, right? Renunciation, bodhicitta. So now I'll have a look at the side of the view. Oh. Let's have a look. We go along. What's the view say? So here we are from Lama Tsongkhapa's 3 principal aspects of the path. This is even though you practice renunciation and cultivate this altruistic resolve, without the wisdom to realize reality, you can't cut the root of traumatic life. So, work at the art of seeing relativity. So here we're going to look at the nature of emptiness and how we can use our understanding of it to bring about states of renunciation. So here are 4 different ways of renouncing something and adopting something else. And these 4 ways are all contained within what we call the King of Reasons, dependent arising. So just like it said in the other slide, which was work at the art of seeing relativity. So dependent arising is another term for relativity. Things exist in relationship dependently. So the first one is to think this, well, I do not truly exist because the way I exist and the way I appear to exist are different. So what are we renouncing here? What are we dropping away, letting go of because it's not true? It's this, truly exist. We're letting go of the sense that I truly exist. So what is that? So what is that? That's not, what's this truly exist refer to? That the way I exist and the way I appear to exist are correct. Right? That's what we're going to drop. We're going to adopt the view, in fact, it's different. The truth is, we don't exist in the way we appear to exist. So, we feel as if we truly exist, right? But when we actually examine to see if this is the case, we see actually we're different. It's different. There's a difference there. The second is, I do not exist from the side of the basis of designation. Why? Because I'm not there when searched for amongst the basis for designation. So what are we dropping here? What are we renouncing in terms of the view? What are we letting go of? That we do exist from the side of the basis of designation, because we actually think we do. We feel as if somewhere within the basis of designation, our body and mind, I'm there. But if we actually search amongst the basis for designation, search amongst the body and mind, for me, we're not there. Right? So this is the thing, so we accept that we're not there. I'm not there. We drop the idea that we are there. That's what we've got to renounce. Thirdly, I do not exist by way of my own character because I depend on imputation by name and concept. Now again, if you ask, so what am I dropping here? What am I letting go of? What am I renouncing? It's existing by way of my own character. That's what we've got to drop. So you can ask yourself, well, do I actually feel as if I do exist by way of my own character? If you say, yeah, you're saying, I don't exist dependent upon name and concept. But in fact, we do exist dependent upon name and concept. But it doesn't feel that way. Our ordinary lived experience is not that. We seem to exist independent of this. We're already there. So this one here is great in a way. It's like I said, we're already there and we're just given the name. Right? And lastly, I do not inherently exist because I exist dependently. So what are we dropping here? The idea, what are we letting go of, is the idea that we do exist inherently. We exist independently in some way. We're not reliant on anything else. Now again, all of these things don't, it won't work to force yourself into this. This is, like I said, it's just discovery. You discover that whatever you thought was true, I wasn't. And that's how I think that's how it has to be. So, like I said, renunciation is just like a letting go or not picking up. And you go, well, why not? Yeah, because it doesn't work. It's not true. It leads to problems, lots of them. And the biggest problem being of all is I find myself a samsaric being. When I pick up these wrong views and the behaviors that go along with the wrong views, I'm a samsaric being. If I would just drop them or not pick them up, I wouldn't be. Now this wisdom that follows from understanding dependent arising is called, the wisdom realizing emptiness. So when you realize emptiness, either conventionally or directly, you understand that whatever exists is made up. Whatever exists does so. Like what I mean, made up is dependent upon something. But when you do not find an inherently existent body, inherently existent mind, inherently existent self, you will understand that body, mind, self exist dependently. It's the only way they can exist. And the most subtle way is upon name and concept. Which leads us into this, a real deep way of renunciation and adoption. It leads us into what we call the practices of highest yoga tantra. So everything before this is all sutra path, but the practices of highest yoga tantra are based on that sutra path. They're based on the idea of renunciation, bodhicitta, and this wisdom realizing emptiness. And from the tantric perspective, they look at what's the greatest, everything that's come before in sutra is true. There's no problem there. He says, but they're going to say, what's the way we see it is problematic is that we grasp at the ordinary body and mind and self to be true. And we do. We think, well, that's it. So they go, okay, so then the fault here is this ordinary appearance and grasping at it to be true. But because there is no actual truth there, we can use name and concept to have a new way of looking at ourselves. And this new way of looking at ourselves is called divine pride. So divine pride refers to a state of mind where one sees oneself as a deity or a Buddha. Now, it's a method used to overcome the negative self-image that we normally have of ourselves and develop a real positive and empowering self-esteem. By identifying ourselves with the qualities and attributes of a Buddha or a deity, we can attain the same qualities of the Buddha or the deity and overcome the sense of separation and limitation. So even when we began the class, right? So we had an emanation of a Buddha come across, come down here, come down to the level of our heart, right? And then the light expanded and we sort of disappeared into that light. And the light brought everybody else to enlightenment. Right? So that's a really simple process of actually going through an emptiness meditation. Right? We're sort of seeing ourselves as being no different than a Buddha. The ordinary aggregates like disappear, right? And the ordinary body vanishes. And there's just what we call the light. Well, the light's actually wisdom. The light is a symbol for the wisdom realizing emptiness at the Dharmakaya level, meaning the mind of a Buddha. So like I said, so we're conditioning ourselves through that type of meditation to go, actually, the only thing preventing me being a Buddha is this wrong view I have of myself and all phenomena. What if it weren't there? Well, I'd be awake. So I'll do that conditioning now. Even though it's on an imaginary level, it'll have some impact on you. So this divine pride should never be confused with arrogance or narcissism. It's just a real skillful means of developing self-confidence and faith in one's own innate Buddha nature. So when we have the visualization of the Buddha coming in, right, you go, well, that's the condition. But the natural openness of the mind, the fact that I have Buddha nature, that's the cause. So cause and condition meet. Now we have an effect. The effect is my own enlightenment. And so what do Buddhas do? Well, they bring others to enlightenment. So we go, okay, so that's where all the light is going out, all the beings suddenly are turning into Buddhas, just like ourselves. And when we bring them back into the heart, we go, yeah, there's no difference between myself and anyone. At this level, self, one, they're all just conceptual constructs, names and concepts. So finally, this divine pride is it's not arrogance, it's not conceit. He says here, it's a form of humility that acknowledges the vast potential for spiritual growth and transformation within oneself and others. So it's not like we're tapping in, and so what we're dropping or renouncing is a sense of ordinary self, because that's what we grasp at most of all, that we're ordinary. Ordinary body, ordinary mind, ordinary me, trying to be a Buddha.
So, Eddie, is it a matter of not feeding the ego? So instead of being self-focused, it's other focused, and then we just use that. I mean, we emanate as an imaginary person all the time anyway, but it's just an ordinary imaginary person. So then we just use that natural kind of habit to emanate as a perfect imaginary person. So is the thing that actually makes this process safe or beneficial that it's focused on the benefit of others rather than just our own ego?
So you have to realize that so ego doesn't exist at this level. Ego exists, and we understand that there's no actual ego there. The ego is just another word.
Okay, got it.
Ego is not
Yep.
true. Self is not true. This is coming from the basis of selflessness. And it's like we are mere Buddhas, like everything merely exists, existing in mere name. So at this level, that's how everything exists. So we're not wrong to do something like this. There's no mistake here. Now, the other thing we take from this, so there's two things, right? There's divine pride, so we drop the ordinary idea of ourselves. That's what we've got to renounce, our sense of ordinariness. We're dropping that. And then we also move into what's called impure and pure appearances. So we're going to drop the impure appearances, renounce impure appearances, and adopt pure appearances. So as an analogy, right? So when we are in front of a mirror and we see a dirty face, right? Whose face is dirty? That's right. It's ours, isn't it? That's right. Right? So in the same way, the defects of others are nothing but our own impure way of seeing them. Right? So when we recognize that, we can drop it and go, okay, they're just like me. They're just deities in disguise as ordinary sentient beings who appear to be suffering. So this is often the advice, isn't it, when we have how to relate to your teacher when you see your teacher as a Buddha or as an enlightened being. So they're going to appear to us through these impure appearances. But we have to recognize that's an impure appearance, right? That's my projection upon them. But it's the only way I can relate to them. That's the only way really they can relate to us, is with these impure appearances, because we can't get there, grasp them at their pure appearance level. So I think it's idea of just merely appearing. So when we take this, if we could just remember the pure appearance is here, but you're not seeing with your eyes. Right? This is mental seeing. Impure appearance we see with the eyes and the perception. It's like the idea of the looking in the mirror. Think, oh, there's a dirty face in the mirror. You go, no, that's your own. So when you see a dirty person out there, it's like, remember, you got to come back here. Oh, that's how I'm seeing them. It's the same idea. Right? That's my business. And if I keep seeing them that way, it's not so good. Miffy.
Oh yeah, I often come back to this thing that I've heard about in um, counseling and therapies, where a therapist is trained in having assumed positive regard, and so they're you're trained in like being an on the side of that person, seeing their good qualities, seeing the potential underneath all of the dirt.
Mhm.
And it's kind of that I mean, there's a precedence for it in our ordinary world
Yeah.
to change our view, and this just takes it to its ultimate on that on the logic and wisdom of it.
Yeah, I was just thinking as you were saying that, I mean, anyone who's had a child would have been doing this. Your child may be behaving badly, but you don't, it's like you still love that child, right? As your child, you have a lot of affection for them. You understand, it's just in their behavior. But my kid's a lovely kid. The behavior's not so skillful. But so we, like Mickey's point out, we already do this. But this is just like stepping it up a level and deliberately doing it. Because we forget this when it comes to when they're adults, don't we? We look at all the adults, we forget, oh, these people have also been my children because of the getting this continuum of mind and so forth.
And this is really not based on emotion so much as just an understanding of how things work.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So now we're going to sum it all up, right, in one slide. Good luck to Eddie. So we're going to start off with so in the beginning, right, we start off with the mundane correct view. The mundane correct view is the understanding of karmic cause and effect. We're in this life. What we do in this life is of benefit to this life, but what our actual goal is to benefit future lives. How do we do that? By working in harmony with the mundane correct view, adopting the 10 virtuous behaviors, and renouncing the 10 non-virtuous behaviors which lead to lower realm rebirth. So that's the first behaviors of renunciation, summed up in a couple of points. We're renouncing the 10 non-virtues because we know they lead to terrible future lives. We want to benefit our future lives by working skillfully and in harmony with karmic cause and effect in this life. So we rely upon a mundane correct view put forward by the Buddha on karma. So that's basically where we are at present, and we need to be doing this. Now, when we get to actually have an uncontrived renunciation of samsara, this depends, if you think, okay, I've got that, you need a supramundane correct view, because the only way it's going to get you out is not only working in harmony with karmic cause and effect, but the view of emptiness. That will bring about liberation. But to attain that liberation, we need future lives that'll help us stay on the path. So what are we renouncing? The true dukkha and the true origins. And what are we going to exchange them for? The true cessations, which arise dependent upon the true paths. So going backwards, true paths bring about the true cessations which overcome true origins and true dukkha. To be able to do that, we need future lives. But we want to put an end to those by actually achieving liberation. This liberation will depend upon a supramundane correct view, the view realizing emptiness. Now, for those of the Mahayana, right? So what are they abandoning here? Well, the solitary peace of this just attaining liberation. So this here depends upon having a supramundane correct view, the understanding of emptiness, and an uncontrived mind of enlightenment. What they seek is this non-abiding nirvana. So what they're abandoning is the solitary peace of this person's liberation. And to bring about this non-abiding nirvana, they've got to free themselves of the cognitive obscurations as well as the afflictive obscurations. So if you work backwards, depending upon freeing ourselves from the cognitive obscurations, we can do that and attain a non-abiding nirvana. This
So
depends
Eddie,
upon this here. Yep.
just just explain to me again why the picture of a ruler or a king.
Yeah. So because we're going to always going to be helping sentient beings. Right? This goal here is you're in nirvana. You can't help sentient beings. You're out. You've achieved solitary peace. The solitary nirvana, the solitary peace. Here, we're not going for that. We want a non-abiding nirvana. So you want to be here in the world where all these beings are suffering, but we've put an end to suffering. We want to help everybody. So you get somebody like the Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, right? So they're going to come back again and again, right, to help us. If you remember that prayer, as long as there's one sentient being in samsara, may I come back to help them. As long as space remains, as long as sentient beings remain, I will remain. So here's this image of the king. I will remain. I will lead you to the same freedom I have. And lastly, we have this Hatha Yoga Tantra, Dzogchen Mahamudra, these types of things. So what you're abandoning there, or renouncing, is the impure view. This depends upon you having a correct view of emptiness, an uncontrived mind of enlightenment, and initiation. So you want to have this, like I said, drop the impure view, have a pure view, and drop the ordinary sense of self and the images associated with them. So here's your sort of renunciation again. The impure views and the idea of being ordinary and identifying with the ordinary image of your body and an ordinary mind. So I just found it sort of fascinating from my reading that, renunciation even went up right across. You could go from each stage of the path.
Yeah, Eddie, I had no idea that. I mean, once it's put like this of renouncing the ordinary view, it makes perfect sense. But I never thought of it as a form of renunciation.
Yeah, no, I'm sure most of us don't.
Mm.
So we can't cling to ordinary aggregates at this stage. We can't cling to an ordinary self. In fact, the whole idea of clinging should be just forgotten because we're merely existing. We understand we merely exist. I mean, even from that's even come from here. The definite emergence. It can only be done as you actually understand everything exists in mere name. So we just build on it.
Mm. Yeah, I agree with what Miffy's saying, Eddie, that, when you look at the way you've done it, when you look at, the language of, some of the other paths of, giving up, but that's exactly what renunciation is. And so it really makes you understand and permeates understanding for, so that's what these other stages are, trying to get you to do. So it's
I hope
it's
so.
very important.
Yeah, I hope it does. I just want to make it sort of like rational and reasonable. So, you can see the sort of continuum that you're just moving from, like a provisional giving up to a definite giving up, and then you give up the idea of solitary abiding, and then then this idea of the impure view. So finally, this leads us to some encouragement. This is from Lama Tsongkhapa's final verse. And he says here, as you can see, when you have correctly understood the essentials of these three principal paths, child, seek seclusion and strengthen your effort to swiftly accomplish your future well-being. So in other words, he says, look, it's not enough just to have an understanding that we have by doing a short course like this. Like try and do more than that. This just gives you an overview. It'll require more of us. more from us, rather. We're going to have to make effort. And of course, Caroline, myself, Susan, we're old people, right? We're the elderly. We won't have much time to go in this life. So we need a future rebirth, a good one, where we can continue on.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Caroline?
But one thing, Eddie, I think, you've got the word encouragement up, which is a great word. And I just can't help adding to that is the encouragement that neuroscience has given, that like neuroscience has now proving, what the Buddhist science of the mind have always tried to put forward, and that you do, through working on these, you do develop new neural pathways in the mind, and that you do change. So you can actually change from abandoning, what's harmful and adopting, what is beneficial. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I found a great quote online this morning. So the question was like, what is death? And what did I say it was, Nafi? Do you remember?
Something about when the
the
attention is no longer on the body.
releasing of attention to the body. The release of attention to the body. This is death. So that's going to be we're all going to find that taking place, right? So attention's going to, and this body's going to be left behind. Our attention's going to go on. But so knowing that, we should have this idea of, well, like where? Where's it going to go on to? What's going to happen to it? What sort of bodies might it find itself in? In this life, it was in this body. Right? And I was able to do something useful with it.
Venerable Thupten Chodron said, we don't need a fortune teller to figure out where we're going to end up. We can just, look at our actions, karmic cause and effect. It's going to be far more reliable
than a fortune teller. Yeah. So let's keep going. Let's keep studying, doing the best we can. Try and develop these good mind states of renunciation, bodhicitta, and a correct view, and all the other good qualities that are subsumed within those three. So in brief, what's our takeaway? We know these four principles, and like it's great. We've got two hands and we've got two knees, and we can sort of associate one with each one of them. That's a great way of remembering it. Whenever we do a prostration, we can say, when this goes down, I won't return a strike for a strike. I won't return anger for anger, and so forth. We know it's possible to renounce these impure perceptions, and anyone who's engaged in the practice of Tantra, that's what you're doing. You're adopting, the pure view of oneself as a deity or a Buddha, and my surroundings are pure too. And we all have a capacity for renunciation because none of us like suffering. It's just a matter of looking, okay, what causes it? I'm not doing it. It's a good thing to mind, does not like suffering. So it's possible for all of us to develop, sort of a deeper renunciation, an uncontrived renunciation, and seek freedom. So I've got this thing for next week. Of course, this is not for me for next week, but if you can come across any commentary on the foundational good qualities, have a look at it, go through it. And next time I've come up with a title for my next course. It was called The Happy Outcast. So I see that being us. And how to go against the stream of worldly concern. So it was great. I come up with this last night. I wanted to do a whole other course for today. I went, maybe I could do this for the next time. Yeah. So look, I just want to say thank you, all of you, for being in the classes and contributing with your conversation and questions. I find it wonderful. So please, now think of yourselves, of course, but of other people too. In fact, all beings. Think that by engaging in these classes, you wish to become enlightened for their sake. And if you have Dharma teachers yourselves, decide to repay their kindness by becoming enlightened. If you have teachers who are unwell at present, or you know people who are sick or dying, let's dedicate the virtue for them as well. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche, abandoned the Nirmanakaya aspect a little while ago, but we'd like him to reappear. So we can also dedicate for his reappearance. And at the same time, there have been some other wonderful teachers who have also abandoned the Nirmanakaya aspect. So whoever they are, whether are our teachers or other sentient beings, let's dedicate our virtue to them with a wish that we become enlightened. So just recite with me. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel, bodhicitta, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And as long as space endures, as long as sentient beings abide, may I too remain to dispel the sorrows of the world. Okay. Well, that's the end of this one.
Thank you, Eddie.
Thanks, Eddie.
Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you,
And
Eddie.
thank you, Miffy.
And
And
see you again in the future. Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Lou. Thank you, mate.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
so much, everybody.
yes,
See
thanks
you,
to
see you in
everybody.
2 months.
Okay. That's
See you
right.
then.